I don't care who starts the conversation in the elevator, but I want the other two people engaged in the conversation to say, oh yeah, I've been hearing from those people too, right? So I don't care if it's the CEO who now calls the CFO and the department heads in and says, what's this all about and how come I haven't heard about this before? Or if it's the department head who says, I've been telling you guys, I need this help. Or if it's the CFO who goes, shit, I could lose my job. I think we should talk to these guys. I don't care who starts the conversation, but when the conversation starts, I want the other two to go, hey, oh yeah, we've been hearing from those guys too, right? And in one place, it'll be the CEO who will start the conversation, and in another place, it'll be the other one. So when I do B2B, I am almost always picking 3 entry points and hitting them all at the same time with slightly different messages, right? So the message is different. Well, they have different concerns. So just to use this example, see the hospital CEO, besides not getting fired, because that's everybody's concern, but the hospital CEO's concern has a lot to do with ego. So it has to do with image, with if he's at a mid-sized hospital, is he going to figure out a way to move up to a big hospital? It has to do with donors, raising money, the hospital's prominence in the community, right? The CFO, money, right? Are we making money? Are we losing money? Do we have enough money to pay our bills? Can we build the new wing? Can we buy this equipment when we need it, et cetera? The department head, very much not losing my job and hopefully getting a promotion, and not having my foot in the ringer. So the conversation with the CFO in this case, which is all about expense management in the hospital, is you could have your credit rating downgraded if your numbers aren't right, and that's going to be your head on the block, right? If all these losses are discovered, it's going to be your head on you're the guy getting thrown under the bus for this stuff, right? And furthermore, you could come up not able, so when the CEO says, I want a new laser papupu, you're going to have to say, no, we can't afford it, when with our help, you could say, no problem, sir, right? So that's kind of where he is, right? The CEO's in a very different place. So for the same proposition, so Tip O'Neill famously said, all politics is local, right? Ultimately, all politics is local, all right? So you run a national campaign, but in reality, the coal miners care about being coal miners, right? The people in California don't give a shit about coal miners. In fact, they hope they all die of black lung tomorrow, right? So you're Hillary and you don't go to Wisconsin, sorry, Now, they're overkilling, so their answer to Hillary never going to Wisconsin is to put the Democratic National Convention in Milwaukee. But all politics is local, right? So all business is actually personal, right? So Tip's right about politics. Ultimately, it's the kitchen table and the potholes in the road, right? The reason de Blasio is so unpopular in New York has nothing to do with anything except snow removal, garbage, and potholes. He could bring himself up in the polls if they just plow the friggin' snow, So all business is really personal. So B2B is actually deceptive if you think about B2B and B2C in a dramatically different manner, because all business is literally personal. So the CEO is making business decisions, but mostly he's making them in the context of how it affects him, right? The CFO is making business decisions for the business, but he's mostly making so like an aging CEO, his deal now is legacy. The number one thing on his mind is after he retires, right? Is this thing going to be okay? Is it going to fall apart? Am I going to be well regarded? Am I going to not be well regarded, et cetera? And so all his decisions now are going through that prism. 20 years younger, the CEO's got a whole different, right? So whatever we're selling, we got to figure out a way to make it personal to the people who are going to drive the decision. Just like we have to make politics local to whoever is going to drive the decision. You know the Amish story, my Amish story about Trump? Yeah. So how many don't know this? Raise your hands. All right, I'll do it real quick because it's so instructive. It doesn't matter that it's Trump. It's just the methodology is so smart. He probably carried Ohio because of the Amish. And I doubt anybody's figured it out but him yet. Now, the reason I know he knew is because 4 of the last 5 rallies here were down in the Akron-Canton area, 2 of them behind the Akron-Canton airport. Well, why not at a bigger venue closer to a major market, Cleveland or Columbus? Well, because the back end of that empties out into Amish country. And what was in the parking lot outside all the rallies were a bunch of horses and buggies, and a bunch of Amish people were there. And by the way, they can't see the rally on TV. They got to come. So I'm driving to a county fair and to race a horse. And every 3rd yard in this Amish area I'm driving through has a big Trump sign up in the front yard. Now, you didn't see that anywhere. You could be in the most everybody was hiding. Nobody's got a Trump sign in their yard, including me, and nobody's got a bumper sticker, and every other yard, there's these big signs. So Amish guy I know that we do business with because of the racehorses. It's his local market, and so he drops by the barn, and I take him aside, and I say, you got to tell me about the Trump thing. I mean, there's signs everywhere. You guys can't possibly be able to tolerate Trump. He says, well, look, there's all kind of reasons we shouldn't, and you know them without us saying them. He said, so I'll answer your question, and I'll tell you something that will interest you because of your other business. He said, number 1, we're all gun people. Now, we won't go to war and shoot anybody, but we're farmers. We got guns, and we got a lot of them. Okay? We think she'll mess with us. We don't think he will. Number 2, we're all small business people. He said, we all either got something on the side or 5 of us own a furniture factory, et cetera. We're all small business guys. And we get them. Number 3, we have all kind of exemptions from federal law. Like their employers don't have to do Obamacare. They never did. They were exempt. They can educate their kids the way they want to. There's no, thank you. There's no Common Core. Okay, so he says, we think she'll mess with us. We think he'll leave us alone. He said, so for those 3 reasons, despite everything else we have to hold our nose about, believe me, on election day, the buggies are lined up, we're all going to the polls, and we're all voting for him, and our wives are all voting for him whether they like it or not. He said, now here's what will interest you. He said, we don't show in the polls. We don't have any landlines. Our cell phones, they all got them, by the way, our cell phones are all tied to our businesses because we're not allowed to have cell phones for personal purposes. It's against our religion. But we're allowed to have cell phones in order to conduct business. So we all got one, right? But they're all tied to our businesses. They don't get polled. He said, so we don't show in the polls at all. He said, we don't show in the last election because we had nobody to vote for. We couldn't vote for Obama. The reasons are probably obvious. We couldn't vote for Romney. He's a Mormon, for God's sakes. He's running a satanic cult. We can't vote for him. He said, so he says, mostly, we didn't vote. So we don't show in the most recent set of data, and we don't get polled. We're going to be a complete surprise to everybody. I came home, I called Cardell, my client in England, because I bet all the way along. And I said, lay another $3,000 on Trump because I just learned something I didn't know, right? But now somehow he knew. And I know he knew because of where he put the damn rallies, because there's no other reason to put them where they were. Peter Pritter's wife went to one, and she said the whole parking lot's full of horses and buggies. I mean, this thing's, and everybody in there is in, overalls and straw hats and beards and long dresses, and what's this about? I already knew. I said, well, I know what this is about, right? But it tells me he knows what this is about too. Somebody anyway, but I would be prone to credit him. But now this is target marketing, right? This is who can we, so here's the carryover to what we do. It's not about, most successful marketing exercises are really not about converting virgins, and they're not about changing minds. That's not what they're about. They're about getting everybody who is prone to be with you anyway to show up, to buy, to be with you. That's what they're about. They're not about majorities. They're about, in marketing, monetizing minorities. That's what they're about. Direct mail is all about that, right? You guys are living on 0.02% on the front end, and we're all living on single digits and double digits all the way up the line. Even this. So there's 100 and, I don't know, Vicki could tell you for sure, but 66 or 67 primary registrants. Now, the list this is offered to is 800 something, because it's only people that raise their hands this year or prior years. The only way it goes to the bigger membership is by mentions. You see them, and people raise their hands for them. So people actually getting the sales pitch for this is only 800 or so, and there's 165. Now that's a big number. It's an enviable number. Still, though, of super qualified people who asked to be told about it, 800 less 165, whatever that number is, huh? 80-20. Yeah, it's 80-20. I'm living off the minority. I'm not living off the majority, right? And if I made the mistake of trying to broaden the appeal, I'd have 80 in here. That's what would happen. And he very much knows it. So he carves out, like he got every coal miner vote in Pennsylvania. I guarantee you, there ain't a single coal miner who voted Democrat, ever, right? And they all went to the polls. So that's okay, I know I can get them. Let's make sure I get every single one of them. This group, if I get any, I can barely get a little, so I'll throw them all away and make sure I appeal to the ones I can get, right? On the other side, politically, so Bernie, pretty much the same thing. I mean, there's a Bernie constituency. I have relatives amongst them who he is perfectly matched with. I mean, he knows who his constituency is, and he is playing to them, not worrying about the ones that are marginal, because that'll be a losing proposition. And the ones that don't understand that, everybody who ever pitches the Big Tent theory politically, they're all the political consultants who work every campaign with losers. They've never gotten anybody elected, ever. But if you sit and talk to Viguerie or Karl Rove on our side and Carville on the Democrat side, see, these guys are about minorities. They're not about trying for majorities. They know better. The bigger tent theory doesn't work. All right. Let's start where we're supposed to start. If I wind up with some time, we'll come back. So I'm going to start on page 40. I can't read my own handwriting. It's either 41 or 44. It's about the secret of internal repetition. 44. Thank you, it's 44. But I am going to do something before that, but that's where we're going to start. So I'm going to do something you don't have. So there's litmus tests that you want. There's some in the sales letter book that allow you to like judge, is this good or not? And then you may choose to violate for some reason, but you ought to know that you're violating the most proven and reliable approach to something. So again, the headline test is, would it work as a classified ad with a response instruction? So that's the most reliable headline, and subhead will pass that test. If we just took it and added a way to respond, it would work. So like cute, clever headlines. I had a winner in direct mail for 3 years, and the headline was Ring. Well, it violates that test. But I know the test at least. I know I'm violating it. And so if you need speed, if you want the odds always in your favor, you'll know the tests and you'll use the tests. And so the basic Sackheim copy test is as follows. There's 4 points to it, and I have 2 I would add, which Max probably wouldn't argue with if he was alive. So number 1 is, do you know and are you expressing why should he read or listen or watch this? The key word in that equation is he in that question, or she. Not why do you think they should read, pay attention to, watch, or listen to this. What is the benefit that you think is the greatest? What is most beneficial to them? But him, where's he at this moment? So it goes back to the B2B conversation. So if you're selling to 60-plus CEOs of good-sized companies, yes, he should read and listen to my argument about all the losses funneling out of his hospital because his expense control system sucks. He should do that because that's his damn job. That's what he should be most concerned with. However, I know he isn't. He's most concerned with his legacy. He's most concerned with what's going to happen 2 years from now when he leaves. Okay? So I better be talking about that. Number 2, why should he believe you and your proposition? Remember that belief is connected to, but still different from, authority and credibility. So we'll believe people with no authority and no credibility more often than not, because people get to trust for all the wrong reasons. Now, by the time they get to a purchase, it may be necessary. But we believe often because it's a thing we want to believe. So I was talking at lunch with Arjan's people, and so the throw somebody under the bus thing I talked about. So the guys run at Trump University, selling get rich in real estate through Trump University. They had so everybody comes to the seminar and they either buy or they don't buy a $30,000 coaching program. There's a one-on-one close. They take them out of the seminar room and somebody sits at a table with them and tries to sell them. And if they don't buy, now what happens? So the rep has like a week to follow up and try and close you. And then the lead gets taken away. And they got I'm using present tense, this is past tense, but so they got the throw you under the bus letter from Donald Trump. And I've seen that you talk to fill in blank, our counselor Carol, and Carol's great, but she's not perfect. And in a seminar environment, sometimes there's a lot of time pressure. She might not have answered every question you have, whatever. And I have personally reviewed your profile, and you are perfect for this program. And I'm losing sleep over us maybe having screwed this up. And so I've scheduled a call for you with our most senior get rich in real estate coach guy, Russell. at 10 o'clock on Tuesday, and you need to call him and speak to him before we give up on each other. 40% of the people come to the call, by the way, which is really high. Okay? But it's because it came from Trump, and they believed it. So our John immediately said, "You mean people believe that?" I said, "Yeah, of course." I said, "First of all, there's pre-belief there, right? They believed the thing was Trump and all of that. But second of all, they want to believe it. I got a letter. Look, dear, I got a letter from Mr. Trump. He says I'm perfect for this, but they want to believe it, right? So therefore it works, right? It's why magic acts work. I mean, you know intellectually it's all nonsense, right? But you want to believe that guy has psychic ability, right? Houdini, who debunked all that stuff, spent the first 3 years trying to find one that was real who would help him talk to his dead mama. And Houdini knew better to the nth degree. But he still wanted to believe there might be one. So you got to know, will he believe it? Why, how, etc. Third is, why should he do anything about it? So we got to be careful that we can make a case to somebody that they accept in every way, shape, or form, and are still not carried that last yard to why should I do anything about it? And 4, why should he act on it immediately? Because you can get me all the way to the, conceptual point. So like you and Partiv and Infusionsoft, right? You guys can get somebody all the way to the point of agreeing, right? Their thing is in chaos. Money's fallen out of 22 holes. Their database is a god-awful mess. They don't know half of the shit they should know, right? But they can still stop short of, I got to do something about this right now. Because the wheels haven't completely come off. We're making money. I got bigger fish to fry, yada, 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 right? So the last thing is, why should he act on it immediately? Now that's Sackheim's from however many years ago that was. I would add 2 things. Fifth thing is, why should he deal only with you and ignore everybody else on this? Now, Max didn't have that, but in Max's day, we weren't in the kind of competitive environment we are in now. So I don't think Max would quarrel with adding it. Then the last one he might not like, but it's a big one with me. So the last one is, why should he feel like shit if he fails to act? And I mean it the way I said it. So the word is not think, the word is feel, and he has to feel like shit because he didn't act. Ashamed, embarrassed, guilty, stupid, etc. So a big thing in my CEO copy to the hospital executives is, you have no idea how many of your department managers are laughing at you behind your back because they know this and you don't. Now that's a feel thing. It's not a practical thing. It's not okay? So when we're done and you don't act, I want you to feel just like crap. Not a little, a lot. Right? So those are my copy tests for you. Now, let's talk about the secret of internal repetition. So there's 2 kinds of repetition, basically. There's the sequence, which we're going to talk about next, but there is the sales letter itself. So again, we're doing human selling stuck inside an envelope. So here's what we know about B2B. Hasn't changed in 40 years. Almost all the sales occur on the 5th, 6th, and 7th talk. In fact, the bane of existence to B2B is long sales cycles. So in the days when there were copier salespeople on the street, everywhere, wheeling photocopiers in and out of offices and selling copiers, okay, only 30% of the sales were closed at the first demo. The rest of them got closed by the sales guy coming back and coming back and coming back. It's true in B2B today. The chiropractor who wants to get a personal injury attorney to start referring to him is going to get that to happen after 6 or 7 repetitive times. It won't be the first time he takes a guy to lunch. It'll be the 3rd time he takes the guy to lunch. Right? So there's repetition in his process. We do that with sequences, but we also want to do it internally in the sales letter. So there is, in almost any long-form sales letter of mine you would read, you will find, if you look for it, now that I've called your attention to it, you will find redundancy. You will find here on this page, we talked about X, and lo and behold, 4 pages later, we managed to find our way back to talk about that again. And for the most part, in a long sales letter, you'll find it no less than 3 repetitions of almost everything that matters. Now that might be by asserting it once, putting it in a story the 2nd time, and having a testimonial say it the 3rd time, but by God, it got said 3 times. You'll even find, if you dissect, you'll find a construction actually not unlike the TV infomercial construct. You'll actually find a sales letter in 3 acts, and the acts are redundant. They're just delivering the same thing in a little different way. If you are a parent and you're getting all the high point stuff, so like the appropriateness quiz, well, it's rigged, first of all, of course, but it is also rigged to repeat the sales presentation, almost in the same order. So the same things we said to you about why you should come and check out High Point for your kid and why you would want your kid to go to High Point, in the order we say them, which are, by the way, life skills, meaning the kid gets out of here, he won't come back to your basement. He'll actually possess adulting. God, what a verb. He'll actually be able to function on his own, not just get a job, but be able to actually function, you know? You see the TV commercial where the woman's got a date coming over, she's cooking for him, and she burns the food, and she's now on Skype or Zoom or some damn thing to her father. And her father's telling her, well, look in the cupboard and see what you got. Well, I got some spaghetti thing. Okay, get that out of there. Put it in a pot of hot water. Go in your fridge. This is what, well, so our High Point story is she won't call you. Okay? She'll actually be able to function on her own. She'll have life skills. She'll be able to get up in the morning, get herself dressed, be emotionally resilient, be able to get along with people. That's number 1. Number 2 is character and values, because we're a character and values school. So you spent 18 years trying to embed certain values in this child, and now you are going to turn them over to the communist indoctrination camp called Stanford, and they're going to take gender, food, politic, diversity classes. No, that's kind of not what you want, is it? No. So we have 5 things, okay? So now if you take the appropriateness quiz covers the same things in the same order. The first set of questions are really about what kind of life skills you want the kid to have. The second are about character and value, the third, etc., right? So I just took the sales pitch and I repeated the sales pitch in the questions. The recorded interview is the same thing, almost in the same order, done as an interview. I build it from the transcript of Cobain's speech, so when they listen to his speech, it's a 4th redundancy of this, all built in the same sales package. Because what I'd really like to have is the 7 repetitions all in the same setting. You sit down and you go through our stuff, you heard the pitch 7 times. Throw them under the bus, see, that strategy is just about getting him to hear the sales presentation twice. Helen doesn't really do anything different than Stacy did, and Stacy doesn't really do anything different than Helen did. I just got the guy that didn't buy the first time to go through the sales presentation a second time. Now, if we could play that straight, that'd be wonderful, right? So I do my sales presentation, you don't buy. Whatever at the end you say. I got to think it over, I got to pray on it, I got to whatever. If I could just say, well, okay, but look, let me just do the sales presentation all over again a second time. Maybe you'll change your mind. And by the way, people would change their mind, but you won't let me do that. So I can't tell you the truth, so I have to make you do that sneakily, right? But that's really all I'm doing. I'm getting you to go through the sales presentation again. I mean, if you could do it selling from the platform, right? If I did the whole Peter Lowe speech and however many ran to the back and bought, if I could say the rest of them, no, you can't leave. You sit back down and I'm going to do the whole presentation again. I get another 20%. It's just they won't let me do that. So I transcribe my presentation, I turn it into a long-form sales letter, and I mail it to all the non-buyers. I get 20%. Could never get any of the other speakers to do it, by the way, and I showed it to everybody. But so all I did was get him to go through the sales presentation a second time. That's it. Nothing magical to it. So internal repetition in the sales letter and in the sales letter plus the collateral material is literally about getting you to go through the sales presentation 3 times, 4 times, 5 times until you finally go, screw it, no mas, I'm in, right? That's what it is. So the other kind of repetition is, of course, sequence. So when we talk about sequences, first of all, we have to decide number of steps. It's always a question, by the way. So how many steps should there be in a sequence? If you're familiar with magnetic marketing, you know I teach 3. A, because you got to teach something. B, because it matches a story. Well, I'm serious. I'm telling you the truth. Okay? I mean, it came from me being really broke and chased by bill collectors. And so the Dunning letter model of the era was 3 notices, clearly marked, first notice, second notice, third notice. Each one gets tougher, and the third one threatens to ruin your life. That's the deal, right? And I mean, seriously, I said to myself, because I was getting a lot of it, I had a bill collector for household finance. There used to be a bunch of these independent finance companies. So I owed household finance, I don't know, and I hadn't made any payments. And, you know, I got the loan here, and I was living in Phoenix. And it was secured by a car that didn't even exist. I mean, it was in a barn somewhere, but you know, you're not going to do anything with it. And so the bill collector literally shows up at my apartment crying. He's going to get fired if he, and he's a little drunk, and 9 o'clock at night, and he's going to get fired if he does. He slept on my couch. I got him up in the morning, got some coffee on him, and got him on his way. But I mean, I'm getting a lot of this mail. And I say to myself, if this will get money from people like me who haven't got any, giving them nothing, what would happen if we applied it to people that got money and we offered them something? So that's where magnetic marketing, the 3-step letter sequence, that's where it came from. So it's true, but it's in a sense meaningless in that 3 steps, 8 steps, 12 steps, 2 steps, there's no, 3 and stop, right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But you got to teach something. And I had the story, so I'm going to marry the system to the story because that helps, right? So the answer to the question is much more complex than a number. How many steps should be in a sequence? And you say 3, or you say 8, now people are happy about that because people like that answer. The answer nobody likes is it depends, right? But of course, that's the legitimate answer about almost everything, because almost everything is situational, maybe other than murder. And look, we can have an argument about that. We do. We have the death penalty argument, which is now situational. We have the abortion argument, which is situational, about it and about what month, right? So we even have an argument about murder as a situational issue, right? So everything's situational. So everything depends, right? If you're anti-death penalty, I guarantee I can get you to some situation where for that particular son of a bitch, you're going to be pro-death penalty. It's how Bush got the caucus, if you remember. Well, what if it was your wife? Yeah, well, it changes things a little, don't it? So everything's situational. Everything in marketing is situational. That's why the 2 best answers are, it depends, let's talk about it, and split test. Those are the 2 answers to really every marketing question, right? So how many steps? So the number of steps answer really is, first, somewhat governed by math. So how many steps can you afford? What is it worth to get a response? And now, what's your maximum allowable cost to get it? So money math enters this picture a lot. Second, how many steps until you can't make a step work? So you're up to 32, and you can't find anything to do with 33 that elicits anything. Fine, now we know for you it's 32, and it's probably 31. In almost every case, I can guarantee it ain't 3. The other reason I did 3 is because at the small business level, often it's all you can get anybody to do. It's almost a miracle to make that happen, right? But if you're going to try and get the small business owner to do what I'm about to show you, forget it. So we have to decide on the number of steps, right? We have to decide on what are we going to use in the steps. Mail, email, text, phone, guy goes and knocks on their door. What are the media we're going to mix in to the steps? Then we have to decide on the schedule of the steps. Is it every 3 days? Is it every 7 days? Is it every week for 6 weeks? What should the schedule of the steps be? Now again, I dictated a schedule for the 3 steps in magnetic marketing, but here it is, one size fits all. But of course it doesn't. Right? The central idea of the sequence, so we have to decide on that. So once our big attempt has been made, and they didn't buy, what is going to be the main theme of the sequence? So often that's whatever the best leverage is. So in the hearing aid business, it's your adult children are going to stick you in a home. So by the way, all the advertising you see now, Miracle Air, Beltone, those guys, they've all reverted back to the dumb stuff. So they're all doing positive stuff, right? Miracle Air's idiotic ad is, now you'll hear more of the joy in her voice and the laughter in the room and the birds in the backyard no. Thing that drives that gray-haired guy in the commercial into the hearing aid office is your adult children think you're addled because you can't hear, and they're going to take all your money in your house and they're going to stick you in a nursing home if you're not careful. That's the lever, right? Because that's what old people want the least, right? And they're well aware that their adult children are having this conversation about them on a regular basis. Is it time yet? Huh? Is it time yet? He looked a little more addled this time than he did the last time. So that's the lever. So that would be the theme of my follow-up sequence. So what's the central idea? You got to decide on tone. The Dunning tone. If you go back and read my Brinkley stuff, turn of the century, Brinkley was doing the same thing. So the tone gets progressively stern as it goes along. That's not the only way to play the game, but it is the way the game is played most of the time. So it starts out kind of friendly and nice, and gee, we might have screwed up and not answered all your questions. And it gets progressively tougher as it goes along, right? To some version of apparently you have no balls, or you apparently are an idiot, and I guess we're going to give up on it. So, that's the tone. So you got to decide on the tone. And by the way, you got to be careful when you're running these sequences, however you run them, particularly if you run them online. As soon as somebody responds, you got to get them out of the damn follow-up database. Okay? Because once they've said okay, you don't want them getting the next, obviously you have no balls or brains letter. Okay? So you gotta be careful about that. Okay? The sequence has to make the case that you're different from everybody else, because that's one of the main reasons they don't buy anything from anybody. Okay? And are you going to make any other changes in your offer, in your proposition, in your payment terms? In other words, are you going to mix it up as you go along, or are you just going to keep the same response desired? One gimmick for a final notice, if you don't mind irritating people. So like I have a sequence I built for a big pest control company selling the termite thing. When they come and they put the tent over your house and everybody's got to leave for 3 days and they blast this thing so you'll never have termites. So the final letter doesn't come from the pest control company, it comes from a law firm. And the premise of it is, by Florida law, we are required to notify you since you have declined having termite stuff done. We are required to notify you of the statistical odds of your house being chewed up and eaten and your life being ruined by this decision. Right? And at the end, you have to sign off that we warned you, and please return this to the law firm in the pre-addressed envelope that comes back to the law firm. Now, there's a tiny little germ of truth in this. But not much. But boy, does it work. Now, it gets complaints, and every once in a while, I mean, we ran it, that I worked with them for 4 years, and I think we had 5 AG letters, and you had to deal with. But boy, does it work, because it just scares the shit out of everybody. And I mean, they're on the phone. When can you get out here? So some gimmick, of the third party step in at the end is a way to play this. So let me show you, I'll show you a simple one, and I'll show you a complicated one. The complicated one, I'll hold up first so you see it all in one piece. Okay? So this is a follow-up sequence on one thing. Okay? So at the top are the offers, because the offer changes. So we really have sequences within a sequence. So we drop the price, we add a bonus, whatever. So horizontally, these are all emails, horizontally here. These are all mailers, horizontally here. These are phone calls, horizontally here. This is a FedEx arriving, so there's a FedEx. This is a teleseminar. This continues over here, okay? And there's a teleseminar, and now over here there's a webcast. And down here are these clusters. So this is everything done once they register for the teleseminar to get them to show up. And this is everything done over here once they register for the webcast to get them to show up for the webcast. And anytime they buy, of course, they come out, right? And so this is across, here's day 1, and here's day 53. So there's 46 steps in 53 days. All to one prospect, all essentially for one offer. Now, when they've made it all the way to 53 and they have refused to do anything, what do you think happens to them? I don't know, they move to a whole new offer and we start all over again. They actually run through about 5 of these before we rest them. Now, we don't give up on them until we get a death notice, but we do rest them from time to time. Shorter, simpler. This is just to a referral list invited to an event with a $600 discount. So it's one offer, it never changes. There's all these emails, there's all this mail, and there's an outbound phone call. And there's 18 days and 20 steps. So it's a lot tighter, but it ain't 3. Okay? And most people are nowhere near as dense and tight and on top of one another with their follow-up sequences as they really should be. So the initial lead generation letter starts a game. The sales letter really starts a game. And actually, the first transaction starts a game. Because immediately behind the first transaction should be a whole bunch of things happening. Let me give you cash flow surge and give you appointment no sale. So cash flow surge, income at will, if you want to think about it that way, has 5 parts to the process. One is identifying the target audience that is capable and potentially willing to respond immediately to a big promotion. So that might be lost customers with an enormous promotion. It might be new buyers who are ascension leapers. Hey, you just bought this thing for $50. There is a thing you can do for $5,000. Most people don't want to do it, but some people do. And we're going to let 10 people do it this month. And only 10, boom, 50 grand materializes out of the $50 buyers, the rest of whom are going to be moved up ever so slowly over a long period of time. But whatever it is, the first requisite is you got to have a target audience who's capable financially and potentially willing to respond to a big promotion right now. So it'll almost always be a subset of your list by some predictive behavioral. They might be your big multi-buyers, they always buy. They might be brand new. They might have somehow demonstrated, right, that. So in LeGrand's case, the ones who have been around and stayed for 4 or 5 years, if Ron wanted a cash flow surge, he just has to roll out his be like Ron. I'll teach you how to be a real estate speaker, and I'll teach you how to be a real estate info marketer, and I'm only going to let 35 come, and I'm going to charge 10 grand a piece, and he'd fill it. Right? And I can't fill it every month, you understand, but every once in a while, if he woke up in the morning and wanted a cash flow surge, that's something he could do. Right? 2, it needs to be unique or limited so that it is urgent. There can't be any sense that it's open-ended and that it recurs that the bus will come around again at some point. So it's inconvenient for me to buy this now, do this now, so I'll wait. You won't get a surge that way. The only way you get a surge is if they believe this bus is only coming around once or once in a blue moon, and if I don't get on it right now, I'm not getting there. Dean Duval, old-time great mail order marketer, all about how to get rich in mail order. Weird dude. The guys from the 80s were all weird. So if you Google Dean F. Duval, it's an interesting excursion, kind of just like the Cold Read letter. So Dean had a $5,000 product. So if you bought from Dean, you got his catalog, you got solo mailings from time to time, and you really were aware that there was this super duper product. Most of the stuff low priced, $39, $99. Maybe the most expensive thing he regularly sold was $290. But everybody was aware there was this $5,000 thing, the master course, that they couldn't afford or didn't want to buy. Once, maybe twice a year, Dean was an art collector. He decided he was going to an art auction and wanted some money. And he would roll out the promotion of this thing so he told one or two stories. Occasionally he told the truth, which is, I'm going to an art auction, I'm going to buy a bunch of art, I'd rather not dip in my pocket to do it, so. The other times he used we had a leak story. The roof leaked, and so we got a certain number of these things that have water stains on them, but they're okay. Harriet dried them out with a hairdryer. They're all right. They just don't look perfect. But either way, it was an excuse to drop the $5,000 to $995. Now, his customers would never pay $995 under any regular circumstance. But they had seen this thing for 6 months, a year and a half. They couldn't or wouldn't afford it, but gee, they'd like to have the masterwork with all the secrets in it. To my knowledge, Dean never sold one for $5,000. He didn't intend to sell one for $5,000. It might have done his heart in if a $5,000 order had arrived, but he sold a lot of them at $995 in big surges. They used to joke about having to go back with the garden hose and wet down all the courses and then wait for them to dry before they shipped them. But so that's the red herring that makes what would otherwise be to an audience an insurmountable price point suddenly reasonable and attractive, because what you have done with a price nobody will ever pay out of that constituency. Okay? Tom Orent, we did it with Tom Orent's coaching. We put a level in. We only did it for 1 year because it backfired. We put a level in that literally gave him Tom, at some stupid price above the other two price levels. But Tom comes to your office and he walks your dog and he hangs out with you and he fixes everything personally, right? Well, it was only there to make the other shit seem reasonable, but 3 people took it, and one of them was in Italy. So Tom said, that's the end of that strategy, because I had to go do 3 of these. But 3, a hard-made, believable deadline, and short supply versus high demand. So if there's only 5 chairs up here, I tell you there's only 5, you can see 5. And the first 5 that get them, and nobody else can get to sit in the chair and play the game, there'll be a stampede. If I got 50 chairs up here, the ratio against the number of you out there is not enough. Right? It won't create a stampede. And you got to believe me that we're done with this at the break. I don't give a crap how many people are in chairs and not in chairs. We're done. So you have to believe me. So in ongoing relationships with a market, a group of customers, the worst thing you can ever do to yourself is get caught faking your deadlines. Because once they know, you will never convince them again that they are real. So plot your pricing. If you're going to fool with it along the way, plot it so you have the ability to monkey with it without coming down to where it was before the first of the deadlines. So if you're going to need a discount, that's okay. Just start someplace that allows you to do it all the way along. 4, compelling bonuses. This can help cash flow surge a lot, is if you could figure out the bonus or bonuses that make the core offer free. Often in many businesses, unfortunately, that's personal access. That's personal time. We're all, as a bonus, the first 15 people, we're all going to go to the tournament at Pebble Beach and watch golf together. Right? That'll create a surge. The bad news is you got to go to Pebble Beach with the first 15 and watch golf together, But some bonus that is limited, it's tied to the deadline, and it's so desirable and or so valuable that the argument is, even if you never used the core product, you still got a bargain. And 5th, the possible threat of banishment. So cash flow surges sometimes, particularly if they're run against badly behaving customers. So the catalog industry, I used to do it when I had a catalog at General Cassette. Almost every catalog company does a version of it. The most aggressive version is if you're getting a catalog on a regular basis and you haven't ordered in some period of time, there will be the big sticker or the special cover that says, you're getting the polite one says, you've been getting our catalogs, you haven't ordered in a while, we don't want to waste trees and waste your time and waste your attention sending you stuff that doesn't interest you, so. The impolite ones skip that. The rest of it's the same. This is your last catalog. If you don't order, you will never get a catalog from us again. If you do, though, you can have any item you want this time at 75% off, and you get a free umbrella. So there's the threat of banishment. Oh man, I'll never get a catalog again. Now the logic of that is insane, right? So you've gone a year and you haven't ordered anything out of it. What do you care about never getting it again? But you do the minute I tell you you're never going to get it again. You're going to be excommunicated and not be allowed to come to church. Ever. Well, but you haven't been going to church except on Easter for like 10 years, right? You can watch Easter on TV, but immediately, oh shit, I better go to church because, So the threat of banishment can be a real trigger in these things. The other one we'll do before we take a little stretch break, bathroom break, is appointment no sale. So appointment means the sales event. Whether they actually had an appointment or not, or they just wandered into the car dealership and took a test drive, they didn't have an appointment, it doesn't make any difference. But there was a sales opportunity, there was a sales event. They put themselves in a position to be sold. And then they did not buy. So this you have. You don't need to write this down. This is on your page 47. Which means I can put it away for a second. So a lot of businesses don't do appointment no sale. They don't, if they do it poorly. They don't invest in it much. A lot of times it'll be the car sales guy who didn't close the sale. He's supposed to call you 3 days later, but he doesn't. So there's really not much happening in this category. There's three main reasons why it doesn't. One, a lot of people's response to this is they just saw our best dog and pony show. If the sons of a bitches won't buy from that, they're shitty customers. Right? This is blame the customer. It's ego-driven, number one, because I don't want to admit, right, that I missed one. So they have to be idiots, right? That's number one. Number two, it's belief itself, right, is, gee, they were here in our place. I was on stage in front of them. They just got the best we got, and they didn't buy. So there can't be any juice in that piece of fruit. Right? It's the second thing. Third thing is, in many businesses, there's a secular religion. There's a religious belief that has been passed down from generation to generation to generation. Some version of, in the auto business, they use the word be back. There ain't no, so the auto industry religion, it's all one, the words are all smushed together like a website. And the religion is, there ain't no be-backs. And every sales manager screams this at his salespeople in the meeting. There ain't no be-backs. Meaning, you either get them while they're here, or they're dead to you. So you might as well pull out all the stops, have blood on the floor, do the bring in the sales manager trick, throw shit at them, whatever you got, because there ain't no be-backs. Now, the empirical evidence in the auto industry contradicts that. Okay? There's actually facts. Real news. There's actually facts that well over 60% of all automobile sales occur over 4 to 6 weekends. And people go back a second and even a third time to, as they whittle the list, over 30% take a test drive in a vehicle they buy more than once. So the empirical evidence contradicts the secular religion, but the secular religion still wins. The fourth reason, which the first time I had it enunciated, it to me was at Miracle Air. But then when I would prod people, I would hear it from others. So the Miracle Air franchise owner's objection to doing appointment no sale, guy that owned 20 some odd stores, he says, if I do that and it works, all the salespeople will try to close less. And I am not going to have them make money trying less harder. I want them to sweat blood for their commissions. I said, I'll be a son of a gun. All right? So you could have more money, but you won't do it because they'll make more money and not be sweating blood. This is your business plan. All right? I mean, this is a smart guy. He owns 20 stores. He's making a lot, but it turns out it was a lot of them. This was their deal. So there's a lot of stuff in the way. So like when I was doing the success events, and we, not kidding, we took the pitch, we transcribed it, we turned it into a long sales letter, and we mailed it to all the non-buyers. The only thing that was different was like the first third of the real estate, which said, hey, you were at the success event in Dayton, and you didn't get magnetic marketing, and I think you made a big mistake. Now, there's several reasons why you didn't, like you left early, so you didn't even hear me. B, you were just exhausted. 3, you already had 2 bags full of stuff, and you couldn't carry a third one. It's like, and so, but now I'm going to let you reconsider, and you can have the same offer we did there if you respond in 10 days. Now, the rest of it was the same presentation they had heard, virtually word for word. I added subheads. So it wasn't a genius copywriting job by any stretch. The original one was, though. So it works. So I'm a nice guy. I show it to Zig. I show it to Tommy Hopkins. I show it to Brian Tracy. I say, you guys should be doing this. And actually, I told Peter, we should crisscross it. right? If they won't do it, let's send every Zig buyer who didn't buy Brian a letter from Zig saying, congratulations on getting my stuff, but you should have his stuff too. And let's send all the Brian buyers then. Of course, we'll send them all mine. So couldn't get anybody to do it. And here's what everybody said to me, some variation of, they just saw my best act. If they didn't buy from that, there's no juice in the lemon. I'm going, but I got facts. They just saw my best act too. But I got facts. No, they just saw my best act. They're worthless. Okay, Zig, I couldn't even get, I said, Zig, surely you will understand this. There's a lot of reasons people don't buy right here in the arena. One is they got to go home and pray over it. If nobody else will understand this, you should understand this. Zig's answer, they just saw my best act. So, okay, fine. Okay. So some version of that gets in the way of this with everybody. So here's the good news. If you run a good appointment no sales system, you don't have much competition. It's not like they see this from everybody who fails to sell them things. They don't. The fire alarm industry, where I did a bunch of work, that one's pretty much gone. It does exist in some rural areas, but for the nickel talk, I can't see them in here, but in your room and in the hallways, of course, there's smoke detectors. And so how many of you have a smoke detector, in your house? Everybody, of course. Okay, how many of you have a heat detector? 2, 3, maybe? How many of you don't even know why you should have a heat detector? Of course. Okay, so here's the fact. So when you walk around in a commercial building, like where your office is, or a restaurant, or a hotel, they got smoke detectors, of course, but you're also going to see the sprinkler system is run off heat detectors. It's not run off smoke detectors. So the sprinklers you see, wherever the hell they are, apparently we don't have any in here, so we're all going to die. But, yeah, there we go. Okay, so that little thing, see that little sprocket on the end? Okay. No. That's a heat detector. And so when the heat reaches a certain point, that baby pops off of there, and it turns on the sprinkler system. Right? So why isn't there a smoke detector there? Because 2/3 of the fire, they get hot enough to kill you before they generate enough smoke to set off a smoke detector. So when you go to sleep, when you get home, and you go to sleep in your house and you think you're okay, I'm telling you, you're not. You're okay with 33% of the fires. But 66% of the fires, you're going to burn to a crisp before the smoke detector ever goes off. That's why in here, we got heat detectors. Right? So the heat detector for the home used to be sold by door-to-door sales guys and people that came to your house. It was about a $3,000 to $5,000 sale to equip an average-sized house. And let me tell you what a great high-tech device it is. It's fabulous. It's a metal can. It's about this big. It's metal. Right? It's painted, so it doesn't look really ugly. Oh, they used to not even paint them. They were all army green in the early days. So it's a metal thing about this big. Inside it is a metal spring, just a cheap piece of metal, wound up real tight. And that thing is stuck on the end, holding it in place. When the heat makes it pop off, the metal uncoils and bangs against the can and makes a racket your neighbor can hear. That's the device. There's no battery. There's no electricity. There's no app. There's no nothing. There's a cheap piece of metal coiled up in a ball inside a metal can with a sprinkler head, with a heat detector on it, and when it pops off, the thing unwinds and clangs against the metal. That's the product. All right? Sales, this industry devoutly believed, if they don't make that sale when they're in your living room tonight, they're not going to make that sale after the fact. Because it's a hard sale. It's a prevention sale. You don't think your house is going to catch on fire. They got to show you burn pictures until you say no. I mean, it's a brutal sale. And it's a hard close. And nobody wants to spend $8,000. And then there's the additional problem that based on that story, if I tell it to you well, you're at risk tonight. So if you buy tonight, though, the installer will be here in 7 to 10 days to install the units. A little flaw in the sales story. Because if you think about it, well, wait a minute, okay? But, so they devoutly believe there is no way to go back and make this sale. You either get them now or you ain't getting them. The big dealership I worked with in the Midwest, members of ours for years, we were up to 10% after the fact with appointment, no sale. It's big. It's very big. No commissions. Some letters. And they call in and they buy. So sales letters are great for this. Here's the appointment, no sale structure. Number one is always acknowledgement. You didn't buy. That's why you're getting this. No mystery. Number two, I'm very concerned about you not buying. So, you could burn to a crisp any day now, right? You could die alone, lonely, if we don't help you with It's Just Lunch. You can die broken alone if we don't help you with It's Just Lunch plus Get Rich in Real Estate. And broken alone is even worse than alone. So I'm very concerned about you because of these horrible things can happen. Number three, I'm willing to say it might be our fault, right? Maybe we messed this up. We didn't make ourselves clear. You might say we didn't sell hard enough, right? We didn't. There are usually X number of reasons why somebody doesn't buy at the moment they're supposed to buy. And then you list them. And they include the reasons why people don't buy, the actual worst objections, the worst feature about your thing, and then you fix them one way or the other. Now, you might double the guarantee if you need more risk reversal. I've enclosed 22 testimonials that we didn't show you when you were at the dealership. People just like you. So there's usually 3, 4, 5, pick the number, reasons why you didn't at the moment we all thought you would. Here's the answers to those. Then you produce the same best offer. So the offer that I told you was only good here. I'm going to extend it for another 7 days, 72 hours, whatever that is. And so that you're creating a new deadline, right? You may, in the sequence, now switch to a new and different alternate offer. You might downsell. So we're taking this thing and we're stripping these 5 parts out of it, but you should at least do this, and you can do that for this amount of money. We might change the thing entirely. Oh, okay. You absolutely won't do fix your phone for your dental office. How about fix your hygiene department? We can get the same boost in your revenue by doing that. Okay, so you might change the offer at some point in the sequence. You might change the way they pay you. Okay. We only offered you 3 installments before. We got 6. We got 9. We got 72. We got a balloon note. You only pay a small amount of money for the first 6 months, and then it's all due. Look at what the furniture industry does, right? 0% interest and no payments for 72 months. All the interest accumulates, of course, and if they don't pay the damn thing off on the day that it all comes due, boom, they now have a $48,612 couch. So you might change the way they pay. You might get all the way down to free trial. So in our 16-step sequence for Miracle-Ear, the end 2 were, okay, come in, we'll hook you up, and you wear them for 2 weeks. And now you'll see, free. And then you can bring them back if you want, and we'll never bother you again. Well, about a 20% conversion on those. Because actually, you can hear. And you kind of get used to it in 2 weeks. Sales rep thrown under the bus, we talked about that. And a final takeaway, the threat. Okay, you can't be our customer, like, ever, right? So if you add all these together, right, and you do a 3-time sequence for this, and a 3-time sequence for the new alternate offer, and you do a 3-time sequence within the sequence for the different ways to pay, you do the sales rep under the bus, and you do the final takeaway, you're up to 10, okay, is what you're up to in an appointment, no sale sequence. I'm somewhat embarrassed to tell you that in the 9 years of the Success Events, we only got to sending the letter in the last 5, and we never did anything but 1 step. I have a defense, but it's not really a good one, so I won't bore you with it. But I assure you, there was as much juice in 3 more steps as there was in the first step. So economically, it's indefensible. Appointment no sale almost always works at least at break even. So if there's any back-end customer value, you should always do it. And if you leave it dependent on humans, I promise you they won't. So the financial advisor conversation, so they all, their deal is the free evening seminar, dog and pony show, right? Most of them give away food, come here, you get free chicken dinner, and come and listen to the guy bore you to death with his 412-page book and his pie charts. But there's free chicken. So in they come. And 20%, 30%, what's your batting average? Your batting average is really good for appointments out of a room.
I'm around 50.
Okay, so he's around half, okay? So half at the end of the 3 hours for you?
Sometimes
Longer, because they pick multiple, 3 to 7, 50%. By the way, really dumb advisors cut it down to 90 minutes because they think more people will tolerate it. No. He tries to stretch them to 7. So now half go back and they book appointments. Well, what about the other half? So if you ask most advisors this question, so I ask it, of all people making no less than $500,000, most of them making $1 million, 60 of them in a group, I said, what happens to, and very few are at half, more are at 30, give or take. So what happens to the rest of them the next day? Here's the answers. Number 1, the really honest ones in the room very sheepishly say, nothing. Or, well, they go back in our database. Great. What does that mean? Well, next time we do a workshop, they get mailed a workshop invitation for the workshop they were already at where they didn't book an appointment. Perfect. 3, Harriet calls them if she has time. Those are the 3 answers. Let me promise you, Harriet never has time. You wouldn't either, right? They don't even incentivize Harriet, for God's sakes. You could at least, hey, if you call them all this week and you get 10% of them to book appointments, you get a day off and a spa certificate. No, they don't even incentivize Harriet. So Harriet don't want to call them. Harriet ain't going to have time to call them. End of story. Right? Put them in a 16-step follow-up sequence, email, mail, etc. Guess what? 20% of them, give or take, will book appointments. Now, you got to be willing to get stern and, piss off some at the end and all of that. But so most people have really bad answers to this. Weight Watchers was fielding 1 million phone calls a year when I worked with Weight Watchers. Inbound calls. All the calls are the same. Hi, I'm Harriet. Great, Harriet. And how are you calling us? Mary referred me. I saw the TV ads. Right. And why are you calling? Well, I got a wedding coming up. I got this, I got that. How much weight do you want to lose? Boom. Okay, Harry, great. There's 3 meetings in your town this week. There's one in the church basement on Tuesday. There's one over here on Thursday morning, and there's one at the Weight Watchers Center on Friday. Which one do you want to go to? Harry says, I'll go to the one in the church basement. Great. Be there at 7 o'clock. Do you know where the St. Barnabas is? Yes, I do. Fantastic. That's the whole call. I sat in the phone room all day listening to him, weeping. But here's the dumber thing. So I say, in a week, how many show up at the meetings? Everybody says, CEO says, we don't know. So what do you mean you don't know? We don't know. So why don't you know? Because we have no way to know. The person goes and does the meeting. The people are either there, they ain't there. She does the meeting for whoever's there. However many sign up, and we move on. God, Jesus Christ. I said, so I'm not a tech guy, but I believe you could equip your meeting person with a laptop. And you can stick an antenna on top of it. And you could send her the list of who's supposed to be there. And she can check them off on the laptop. And she can email that back to you. And in the morning, we could do something. We could send them email. We could send them a letter. We could have somebody call them. We could do something. Because they went to all the trouble to tell you they were coming, and then they didn't show up because something happened. Kid fell out of a tree, had a fight with the husband, whatever, right? They didn't lose the weight. I can promise you that, right? That's a guarantee. They're still fat. Probably fatter because 2 days have gone by, right? They're getting bigger. They ain't getting smaller. The problem ain't going away. Let's follow up on them. President takes me in his office. Big company. He says, stop that shit. I said, huh? He said, let me explain something to you. He said, I got an advertising budget. I got a marketing budget. That's what you're getting paid out of. He says, I ain't got no laptop budget. And I'm not going and ask for it. So shut up. Make better ads. Okay. All these people, no follow-up. None, zero. You think there's money there if we just send them all a letter? Hey, Barbara, you were supposed to be at St. Barnabas's. We're very concerned about you because you weren't there. Right down the list. You think there's money there? There's a ton of money there. Ton of it. But it's hard to get people to do it. It's surprising. So, let's take a little break. When you come back, I'm going to give you the formula for the $1 Million Sales Letter, and I'm going to give you something really cool that's not in your manual, but I'm going to give it to you so you can take it with you. And then we're going to end the day with some Q&A.